All right, today we are diving into a legal battle that is, well, it's almost too wild to believe. We're talking a Grammy-nominated rapper, 7 police officers, a lemon pound cake, and a huge question about the First Amendment in the internet age. Yeah, this is the story of Afroman versus the police.
So let's just cut right to the chase, right? Can cops actually sue you for making fun of them online? Like, can they drag you into court just because you turned footage of them into a viral video? Well, believe it or not, that's the exact question that landed the rapper Afroman, Joseph Foreman, in front of a jury.
And this quote right here, it just nails the absolute irony at the heart of this whole thing. You have police officers suing for an invasion of their privacy that happened while they were, invading someone else's home. It sounds completely absurd, doesn't it? So to figure out how we even got here, we've got to rewind and look at the raid that kicked this whole thing off.
Okay, Section 1, a raid and a rapper. The search that sparked a viral firestorm. Now, the rapper is Joseph Foreman, the guy pretty much everyone knows for that massive hit, Because I Got High. But back in 2022, something happened that threw him right into the middle of this huge fight over free speech. Now, to really get what's going on, you kind of have to look at Foreman's past a little bit. So on one hand, back in 2015, there was an incident where he was convicted of assault for punching a fan who got on stage. He later apologized for that. But then, on the other hand, you have this 2022 raid in Ohio, which is what this is all about. A fully armed team busts into his house, and in the end, no charges. Not a single one. And that contrast is absolutely central to this entire story. So let's really dig into the raid itself. Okay, so August 21st, 2022, police raid Afroman's home. And the warrant? It listed some incredibly serious stuff. We're not just talking drug trafficking, but kidnapping. Yeah, kidnapping, apparently based on these really wild claims about a basement dungeon he supposedly had. During the raid, they smashed his door, cut his security camera wires, and took more than $5 grand in cash.
So after all that, this intense, armed raid based on these crazy allegations, what was the result? Nothing. No evidence of trafficking, no kidnapping dungeon, and crucially, no criminal charges were ever filed. The only thing Afroman was left with was a repair bill for over $20,000. And right here, this is the exact moment the story flips from being about a police raid to being about, well, artistic revenge.
All right, next up, the artistic retaliation. From security cams to music videos. So think about it. What would you do if your house got raided and you just felt completely powerless? Well, if you're Afroman, you take the footage from your own security cameras and you turn it into art. He didn't just get angry, he got creative. And he launched what you could only really call a full-on digital resistance. He dropped music videos that used the actual footage from the raid with amazing titles like Will You Help Me Repair My Door? He even started selling merch like t-shirts with the faces of the cops who were in his house printed on them. I mean, he completely seized control of the story in the most public way you can imagine.
And then there was the moment, the one that made this whole thing go absolutely viral. You see, in his music video Lemon Poundcake, there's a shot of one of the deputies just staring at a cake on his kitchen counter. The internet saw it and instantly nicknamed him Officer Poundcake. And that one kind of ridiculous moment, it became the symbol for the entire raid.
Moving on to the cops sue back, a lawsuit for humiliation and ridicule. Now, as you can probably guess, the officers involved were not laughing. So, in March 2023, they decided to strike back, not with another warrant, but with a lawsuit. They claimed that Afroman's videos and merchandise had caused them humiliation and ridicule, and they even argued it put them in danger.
So let's look at the Adams County 7 and what they were alleging. I mean, the claims were all over the place. Unauthorized use of their image. One officer was apparently really upset about being compared to Peter Griffin from Family Guy. And then you had claims of invasion of privacy, harm to their reputation, even public endangerment. They were basically saying, look, this isn't just criticism, this is way over the line.
A huge part of their initial case was built around this legal idea called the right of publicity. It basically means you have the right to control how your name or your face is used commercially. The officers were arguing that Afroman was making money off their images without their okay. But this lawsuit wasn't just about hurt feelings or, being called Officer Poundcake. It got way more serious. It zeroed in on one very specific claim Afroman kept making, that out of the $5,000+ they seized, $400 never came back. He was flat out accusing them of theft. And that right there became the absolute core of the legal fight. See, the sheriff's office did an audit and said, whoops, it wasn't stolen. It was just a miscount. So the question for the court was simple. Was Afroman telling everyone they stole his money a legitimate complaint, or was it defamation?
And Afroman's response to that was perfect. He just asked, how do you miscount $400? And that really sums up his whole attitude, right? It shows why he kept talking about it. For him, and for a lot of people watching, that official miscount explanation, it just didn't sit right.
Okay, next section, the legal battleground, from motions to a jury trial. So, the battle lines were drawn. This whole thing moved from TikTok and YouTube into a real courtroom. Let's take a look at how this all played out legally before a jury ever heard it.
Okay, and this right here is a massive turning point in the case. In October of 2023, a judge threw out those right of publicity claims. The ruling was huge. The judge basically said, look, police officers on the job are public officials, and they have less of an expectation of privacy. But, and this is a big but, the judge did let the defamation claim go to trial. The part about the missing $400? That was still on the table. So this timeline kind of gives you the 30,000-foot view of how this all went down. You've got the raid in August 2022, then the lawsuit gets filed in March 2023, those key claims get tossed out in October, and then we have the trial. Now, I gotta make a quick correction here. The slide says 2026 for the trial, but it actually happened in March of 2024. But still, you can see this was a long, drawn-out process. So when it finally got to court, Afroman himself was on the stand, and he did not back down. Not one bit. When they asked him about his social media reach, he admitted it was huge, and even joked that the lawsuit was just running up his numbers. He said, yeah, he was not happy about his house getting torn down. And when they asked about the money, he doubled down, saying he still believed it was stolen.
Which brings us to our final section. Speech, satire, and a badge. The constitutional stakes of mockery. Because at the end of the day, this case was never really just about Afroman or Officer Poundcake. It became this massive test case for free speech, for satire, and for how we hold police accountable. That's exactly why groups like the ACLU jumped in. The ACLU basically called this what it was, a classic SLAPP suit. That stands for Strategic Lawsuit Against Public Participation. The whole point of a SLAPP suit isn't necessarily to win in court, it's to intimidate and silence your critics by forcing them to spend a fortune on lawyers. So the First Amendment defense here really came down to three main points. First, that whole public official standard. Cops on the job just don't have the same privacy rights as you and me. Second, this idea of transformative use. Afroman didn't just dump the raw footage online. He turned it into music videos, into commentary, into art. And third, and maybe most importantly, was the argument about the chilling effect. If you let cops sue people for this, it's going to scare everyone else into staying silent.
And you know, all of this leads to maybe the biggest irony of the whole situation, the classic Streisand effect. By trying so hard to get this footage taken down, by filing this lawsuit, the officers just made it 1,000,000 times more famous. I mean, honestly, their lawsuit was probably the best PR Afroman could have ever hoped for.
And so, after all is said and done, we're left with a really important question for our times. In this digital age, where everybody's got a camera in their pocket, where do we draw the line? Where does a public official's right to privacy end, and our right as citizens to ridicule them begin? The case of Afroman versus the police might sound like a joke, but the answer to that question, that affects all of us.